Welcome back. Chapter 5, Part 2. So we talked previously about drinking, smoking, and overeating. These are all things that are illegal and things that are affect a lot of us in our daily lives. If not today, in a different time in our lives. So it's different periods of our lives. It's very common. Drug abuse, on the other hand, is an illegal use of things. Now, doesn't mean it's always illegal drugs. It can be starting with legal drugs and abusing those as well. But ultimately, and it can be abuse of drugs that were prescribed. But it is certainly not something that would be as customary or easy to get into. However, with that said, I just read an article this week that said we'd had 1,000% increase in fentanyl use within the last 5 years. 1,000% increase. That's a heck of a lot of increase. So the problem is bigger than the individual problem. It's misuse and misallocation and a lot of other societal problems that lead to that. So what causes that? So we're only going to be able to focus in this particular book and in this particular class, limited to 4 weeks, on the more individualistic stuff. But it's a huge problem. And certainly if you read the news or wake up every morning, read the news, watch the news, however you get your news, it's a problem. Drug use and drug abuse is a huge problem in our society. There are 5 different types of drugs. People sometimes don't realize that. They kind of categorize them into ones, or they confuse the categories. And so it is important that we understand that. We have narcotics. Those are commonly used, that's your fentanyls. Those are used for pain relief. That's their primary use. And when used properly, are important drugs. They are not bad that they exist. They came to us through medicine for a real purpose. It's just bad when they are abused. So they're used for pain. They include things like opiates, heroin, morphine. The problem with them is that the addiction rate is extremely high, and they cause a lot of deaths through the overuse and usage of the drugs. So again, when used properly, when needed, and then should be weaned off, and not used when not necessary. So when I broke my leg, I used narcotics for 2 days, and I definitely needed some assistance for those 2 days. I was in a great deal of pain. After 2 days, I weaned myself off of those medications onto other medications. I was still in pain. I should have been in pain. I broke my leg. So I didn't expect the pain not to be there. So some people get high from it. I personally did not get high from it. I don't like narcotics. They make me feel sick. I'm fortunate that way. So I was not at a high risk for addiction. I wasn't anyhow, because my mind understood it. But when you're in that pain, you don't know. And some people are hospitalized and needing those kind of medications for a longer period of time. And it can be very easy to get addicted. So it's important to use alternatives when possible and to wean yourself off when you can. But they are used for pain, and there's a good purpose for that. Same thing after surgery. I've used narcotics, but only for a day or 2. If you need them, use them, but are there alternatives? Are there other things you can do? It's something for you to challenge yourself. Sedatives, go back circa 20 years ago, they were very popular. Less popular now, but still used and still overused. Those are valerian, Valium, things like that we'll use. The problem with the narcotics and the sedatives is they're highly addictive. So are there other alternatives to them? So both of those drugs are highly addictive drugs. Stimulants are also highly addictive. Stimulants are used because they make us feel high. Very few medical uses for stimulants. There are some for eating disorders, attention deficit disorders, things like that, but not a lot of uses, more uses for the others. What we do see a lot of abuse is in the illegal market with cocaine, crack, stimulants like that we're using it for the sake of being high. So there's not to say there's not a medical purpose, and if your doctor prescribes it, you should use it within those controls, and they are controlling it so you don't get high. It's when we go out and use crack. Drug dealers don't make good pharmacists. They just don't. Hallucinogens, these are not addictive. Hallucinogens, a lot of people think they are, but they are not addictive. Not necessarily a good idea, but not addictive. Typically illegal. They're going to be your LSDs, your PCPs, your MDMs, your date rape drugs, things like that. They cause hallucinations, they cause memory loss, and they cause a relaxed sense, so people will take them for those reasons. again, in the 70s, very, very popular. And even today, circa 30 and 40 years later, with people who heavily used hallucinogens that continue to have flashbacks 40 years later. Marijuana is also in a hallucinogen category. It can increase paranoia, but it can create relaxation, and it can affect our cognitive functioning. Do not tie that necessarily with the medical marijuanas, which are separated differently and used for medicinal purposes. So I'm not here to promote or dispromote medical use of marijuana, but we don't want to confuse that with the liberal use just for the purpose of getting high. And understand that it does have a medical purpose. Whether or not it's right for you or right for someone else, I don't know. Just like narcotics have a purpose. So we don't want to say that they don't have a purpose, just are they being used for their purpose, and are they being used properly? Problem with drugs is they increase our tolerance, meaning we need more and more of it to get the same sensation or the same feeling. The physical addiction, my body actually needs it without going to withdrawals and getting very sick. And the psychological addiction, that I feel like I need it, and if I don't have it, I can't function. Overdoses are very common in any of those drugs that create that feeling. How do we get help, and what do we do? One of the changes that we've seen in the last 10 years, which is great, is now many insurance companies do pay for drug and alcohol treatment, and that was not always the case. So there are some options there if you have insurance, which is really important. And when do we get help? Well, we want to look at what's happening for the person. So somebody binge drinking on a weekend isn't necessarily the same as having a chronic alcohol problem. So what are we really looking at? Is the symptoms, is the problem serious? Is it affecting their life? Is it affecting their work, their health, their social life, their family, their friends? Is it taking them longer than expected to recover? So again, the difference between one weekend of over drinking versus a chronic problem. And is it affecting their ability to be who they are? Many people do not seek help early enough, and that creates more problems because, again, these are addictive substances. So the more the addiction holds on, the harder it is to break it. Communication is very, very important in healthcare, and talking to your physicians, am I taking what I need? Do I need more? Do I need less? Can I be using other alternatives? The problem is, unfortunately, many people do not adhere to medical advice. About 30% of the people who become addicted to drugs, particularly painkillers and things like that, became addicted by violating their physician's care. So they did not follow the orders, did something different, and therefore became addicted. 50%, 30 to 50% happen that way. So it can happen to anyone, but if you're being honest and really working with the physician, you can reduce your risk a lot. It costs about $300 billion a year in healthcare to deal with people who are not adhering to the medical advice that was given to them. So you're paying your doctor a lot of time and money to work with you, and if you don't like your doctor, find one you like. Don't assume that you know everything. You know your body, but share that and share that information. If your doctor's not listening, find one that does. But that can cause a problem. Why do we not adhere? Why do we not listen? We don't like the treatment. We don't like what they say. We don't like our doctor. And sometimes maybe we just need a second opinion to reinforce ourselves, but we don't go take the time to do that. We don't follow up when we're supposed to follow up, but continue on the same path. Or we don't understand the instructions that were given to us. So those are all major reasons why that would happen. So we finished chapter 5. Congratulations. We are about a third of the way through the book, so that's pretty good too. So reward yourself briefly without using drugs, overeating, alcohol, or smoking. Maybe take a long walk as a reward. That'd be great. So I will see you back for chapter 6 very soon.